Hello guys, and welcome back to another tutorial. So on today's video we're going to do the sewing part of this bustier blouse. If you missed the last video where I showed you how to draft this bustier blouse, I'll have it linked up here so you can go check it out. With that being said, let us get right into the video. So guys, these are all our fabric pieces. I've gone ahead to cut the lining piece for each of them as well. I also ironed stay interfacing on our main fabric piece, and then I ironed gum stay to the lining piece, as you can see. Now we want to go ahead to set the lining pieces aside, and then we're going to work on the front piece. So I'm starting with the front piece, and I'm just basically arranging everything, making sure that they are at the right position so we can start joining. I'm going to bring in our wadding. This is the slightly thicker version. You can see what it looks like. So this is what we're going to use to pad our bustier. I'm going to go ahead now to just place our front piece on top and then cut out all the pattern, all the padding pieces we need. After cutting this out, we want to go ahead to trim out half of an inch from this top part, simply because when we're placing this at the top and we're sewing the lining piece together with the main fabric piece, it's going to be too thick. So that is why we're trimming out half of an inch from this. So after cutting the side padding, we're also going to trim out half of an inch at the top part, and then we're going to place all the padding pieces we went ahead to cut. We're going to place them on top of our fabric, our main fabric piece, as you see me doing right now. And I'm basically going to secure this with my sewing machine. So I'm going to sew along the sides like this, and then for the middle one we're going to sew along the sides as well, just to hold it in place for us to sew. You can just pin this down, but I just prefer to do so. So this is what we have after I was done securing it in place. Now I'm going to flip this over to the right side and then place this right sides facing each other, and we're going to go ahead to pin this from the top to the bottom so we can sew this by half of an inch. After pinning this down, we want to go ahead to sew. So we're going to sew along the sides, and then we're going to take it all the way up by half of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead to sew, but before then we also want to pin down this side as well for us to sew. So guys, after sewing, this is what we have. You can see that I also did the same thing for the lining piece, and I went ahead to open up the seams to iron. Now we're bringing the straps. We're going to set the front pieces aside to work on our straps. For the straps, this is very self-explanatory. We're just going to place the lining piece with the straps right sides facing each other, and we're going to sew a straight line on the sides. So we're going to go ahead to do that, repeat it for the remaining pieces we have here, and then come back to attach it to our main bodice. So we've gone ahead to sew the straps. This is what we have. I'm bringing in our main bodice, and we're just going to place this down and then place the straps at the position it's supposed to be. And now after placing that down, we're going to pin it in place so we can stitch it down. So I'm going to do that for both sides, and then we want to take this to the machine to sew by 1/2 inch. I'm done pinning now, and we're going to stitch this along the sides here by 1/2 inch, and then come back to add the lining piece. This is what we have after adding the straps. I'm going to fold that inwards the way you see me doing, and then we're going to bring in the lining piece. We're going to place the lining piece right sides facing each other with the main fabric piece, and then we want to go ahead to sew along the neckline area. But to do this, we're first of all going to pin this down. After pinning this down, we want to go ahead to sew along this neckline area by 1/2 inch, and after sewing you want to go ahead to trim off any excess you might have and create notches at that sweetheart's neckline area. And then for this particular blouse we're working on, our sleeve is not going to be attached to the lower armhole area, so we're going to stitch that part there. We're going to stitch it close. So we're going to go ahead to stitch the neckline area and then stitch the sides closed. We're doing the same thing for the opposite side as well. So when you're sewing the armhole area, you want to stop at about 1 inch away. This is because our seam allowance for the sides is 1 inch, so we're going to sew this and stop at that allowance point. You can see that I went ahead to mark it out so I know where to stop. So we're going to go ahead now to sew this. So this is what we have after sewing. I'm going to go ahead now to trim out the excesses and create slight notches around the neckline area so everything stays really well, and then we're going to give this a good press. So after creating the notches, you can see now that I basically just flip this over to the right side, and I'm just arranging everything so everything is in place and in order for us to iron. Now I'm going to go ahead to give this a good press and set it aside so we can work on our back piece. So this is our back piece, and I'm going to bring in our straps. We've already went ahead to sew the straps, and you can see that for the back strap, because the back strap was a bit longer, I went ahead to stitch this part so when we join the front and the back piece together, our armhole area is closed. Like I said earlier, the bottom part of our armhole is going to be closed while our sleeve is going to be attached to the upper part of the strap. So you can see that I went ahead to sew about 2 inches. If your strap for the back and the front is equal, you will not have this issue. So I'm going to go ahead to just flip this over to the right side, and then we want to go ahead to attach this to our back piece. So I'm just going to pin this down to secure it in place for us to sew. And if you're wondering why we have just one back piece, you'd want to make sure you watch the drafting part of this video. I'll have it linked up here so you can go check it out if you've not seen that video already. So now we've gone ahead to attach the straps. I'm just bringing in the lining piece, and I'm placing this right sides facing each other, and I'm just going to pin this all the way around to secure it in place for us to sew. After pinning this down, we want to go ahead to sew this from the top part here all the way to the bottom. So we're taking this straight down, but we're going to leave the sides open. So we've gone ahead to sew this. I'm going to go ahead to trim out the excesses we have, and then we're going to flip this over to the right side. So this is what we have, and I've already gone ahead to do the same thing for the opposite side. Now we want to join this to the front piece. So this is our front piece. As you can see, I'm going to go ahead to bring in the back pieces, and we're going to place this right sides facing each other, making sure the straps at the top are aligning together, because we want to join the straps first. So you can see the way I'm doing this, I'm just sandwiching the back piece in the in between the front piece, and I'm securing this with our pin. Now we want to go ahead to sew this by 1/2 inch and do the same thing for the opposite side. After joining the shoulders, this is what we have. I'm gonna ahead to join both straps together, and this is what we have. Now we want to join the front and the back piece together, and to do this I'm just opening up the front piece, and you can see that I went ahead to mark my body measurement divided by 2. So to join this is a bit technical, so you want to pay attention. I'm holding the lining pieces together first. So the front lining piece, the lining piece for the front piece, and the lining piece for the back piece, we're going to hold them together and secure them in place with our pins. So after pinning down the lining piece, we want to open this up and then hold the main fabric piece for the front and the main fabric piece for the back together, and we're also going to pin them down. I'm done pinning them down, and now we want to go ahead to sew. So I'm going to sew this all the way down, and then after sewing the main fabric piece, we want to also go ahead to sew the lining piece following the body measurements we've gone ahead to mark out. After joining both sides, this is what you should have. Now I'm going to open this up. We're going to turn this to the wrong side, and then we want to go ahead to trim out the excesses. You can see what it looks like on the inside. We want to go ahead now to trim out the excess fabric. After trimming off the excesses, I'm just creating a notch at the waistline area, just so when we flip this over to the other side and iron it out, it relaxes very well. So far, this is what our blouse is looking like. Now I'm going to open up the seams for the side we just joined and give it a good press, both for the main fabric piece and the lining piece, and then we're just going to iron the rest part of our dress. So guys, I'm done ironing, and this is what we have. Now we want to go ahead to flip this over to the back part, and then we want to add in our boning channels. So to create the boning channels, I'm basically going to sew out 3 lines. So the first one is going to be really close to the joining at the sides. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to sew the first line, and then after sewing this first line, you want to give about 0.75 to 1 inch space before you create the second line. Now I'm going ahead to sew the second line, and you want to space this about 0.75, just enough space for your eyelet to sit, and then you want to sew a straight line at that point. Now for the third and final line, you want to sew this the way we did the first line we created. So we're just going to sew this close to the second line we made. So we've gone ahead to create our boning channels for both sides. Now I'm just going to go ahead to add our boning. So I've added in our boning, and you can see that the boning is a bit curved. We want to go ahead to iron this flat. So guys, this is what the bustier is looking like. You can see that the back boning is laying down very well. Now we want to go ahead to mark out the basque at the bottom part. So at the left side, I'm going to go ahead to mark 3 inches. So from that bottom part there, I'm placing my tape to mark 3 inches. I went ahead to mark 3.5, but I changed my mind and made it 3 inches. So after marking that 3 inches, I'm going to go ahead to create a curve from this lower part here. I'm just going to curve this following the shape we are trying to recreate. I'm going to curve this all the way down to the other side. So I'm going to just continue curving this till I get the shape that I want, and we are going to go ahead to cut it out. So I'm okay with what I have. Now I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So you can see what our blouse is looking like after cutting out the basque shape. Now we want to go ahead to close up the bottom part. So to close up the bottom part, as you can see, I'm using my bias tape. You can go ahead to use the fabric you used in making this bustier top. You only need to cut this on bias when doing this, so your bottom part comes out looking really nice. So I'm just going to go ahead to sew our bias from the wrong side, and then we're going to flip it over to the right side and then top stitch on it. So I'm done sewing the first part of the bias. As you can see, now I'm just simply going to fold it to the right side, as you see me doing right now. I'm just folding this to the right side so we can top stitch on it. Next, we want to create the back cover of this bustier blouse, and I have this fabric here to be 13 inches by 8 inches, and this is actually on fold, as you can see. I also went ahead to iron gum stay interfacing on it. Now we want to go ahead to flip this over to the wrong side, and then we're going to sew around this side here, leaving an opening at this point so we can flip this over to the right side. I'm gonna head to sew this. Now we want to flip this over to the right side and give it a good press. So guys, afterwards I went ahead to iron it. So this is what it looks like. I'm bringing in the main bodice now so we can attach it to the back. So we want to place it at this point here, and then we're just going to go ahead to stitch it down to secure it in place. After which I'm going to go ahead to add in our sleeve and show you the final result. So guys, this is the final result. If you enjoyed watching this video, you're also going to enjoy watching this one, so you want to check this out. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed already, and I will see you guys on the next